I would like to begin this episode by acknowledging that I am located in Ottawa, Ontario, Canada, and I am privileged and honored to live and learn on the unceded, unsurrendered territory of the Anishnaabeg Algonquin Nation.
Hello, you're listening to Trench Leadership, a podcast from the front, produced by iGlen Studios, a show for emerging leaders from all professions. To hear from other leaders who have led from the front, made the mistakes, had the triumphs, and are still learning along the way. And now, here's your host, Simon Cardinal.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Trench Leadership, a podcast from the front. Time management is an essential skill for every team member, but as the leader, this skill is absolutely paramount to your team's success. And so, in this episode, you'll hear from Rebecca Pearce, a certified executive business coach, who will offer advice and practical tips for all of us to manage our time as efficiently and effectively as possible. Here we are, we're getting ready to do this episode, and I'd just like to take a moment to set the stage of what things look like. So for myself, I'm wearing a red sweater. I have brownish hair with far too much white hair on the sides. I've got black glasses on. And in my background is a screen capture of the Trench Leadership logo set against a stone wall. Rebecca is wearing, I think it's a blue shirt, might be white, it's hard to say. She has blonde hair and she's in an office with yellow walls, a beautiful photo of what kind of looks like a tulip, and there's a bookcase in the background. And yeah, so with that, let's get this show on the road, no pun intended, because no one wants to hear from me. They want to hear from the guests. So I am going to try and be quiet and go ahead and introduce Rebecca. Hey, Rebecca, how's it going today?
It's a fabulous day. Thanks.
Oh, thanks so much for coming to the show. We were chit-chatting for a while before we got going. And I think we're going to have, I know we're going to have a very important talk about time management and efficiency. But before we get to that, do you mind taking a moment and telling us a little bit about yourself and really how we got to this point?
Sure. I actually would love to start with a story, and I want to talk to you about the story of my leadership journey. In 2011, I was appointed by the governor of the state of Maryland to run the Maryland Health Benefit Exchange, or Obamacare, in the state of Maryland. We had 2 years and less than 1 month to implement the largest health insurance change in the history of the United States. And we were doing that in the state of Maryland with no existing legislation, no staff, I was the only one, and no clear understanding of how the systems were going to work to make this happen. And I did it anyway. So for 2 years, I could not have worked harder or longer or cared more about what we were doing. And I had a 4-year-old at home. Thank God I had a husband who believed in me, because I was not at home for those 2 years. I was constantly working. Problem is, in 2011 or 2013, I had grown the organization to over 100 employees. So in 2 years, I'd grown it over to 100 employees. I'd ensured that all insurers in the state of Maryland were going to actually participate on the exchange, which was a really important thing. I had gotten 3 state agencies to work together, and I'd set up the foundation to enroll over 300,000 people. But it didn't turn on. And so...
Oh, wow.
And so it was a public failure. In fact, on the day after Nelson Mandela died, my picture was above the fold with the story of my leadership failures. So fast forward 2015, 2 years later, I landed on my feet. I was a vice president within the hospital system and my joke with my 7-year-old daughter at the time was, you can't talk into mommy's bad ear. You got to talk into mommy's good ear. So who has time to go to the doctor, right? Nobody has time to go to the doctor. I had been slowly going deaf in my left ear for several years, and I just ignored it because I just didn't think it was a big deal, whatever the case may be. Raise your proverbial hands if you haven't been to the doctor in the last year because you just don't have time, or worse, you're scared to death of what they're going to say. I'm going to make a really long story short. I walked out of my hearing exam finding out that I had a brain tumor the size of a golf ball that was growing into my brainstem because I had ignored it for so long. Worse, I needed surgery almost immediately. Because of my surgery, I had to learn to walk again. My face was paralyzed for a year. I'm mostly deaf in my left eye, or mostly blind in my left eye. I'm deaf in my left ear, and I have significant ongoing balance issues. Had I gone to the doctor when I had started going deaf, at least 80% of those things would not be true. Go to the doctor. Public service announcement, go to the doctor. So why am I telling you all this? My leadership journey, when I was the CEO, I wasn't all that nice. I was, leave your emotion at the door. We got stuff to do. We don't have time for that. Just get your work done. And when I came out of surgery, all I wanted to do was hug people. I was so happy to be alive. I was just, oh my God, I had so many emotions running through me that I had never had before that I was like, I didn't know what to do with them. So I figured out, I'm getting there. This is really long. I'm sorry. So I figured out how to do my job again. It took me 6 months to figure out how to be a vice president again and show up the way that I used to show up. And the minute that I showed up, I said, why am I doing this? All I want to do is put my daughter on the bus one more time. It doesn't matter. When you realize what's going on in your life, work doesn't matter. It's all about time. And when we talk about time management, it is the only non-renewable resource there is. And when you decide that you're going to commit your time to something that you don't really want to be doing, it's a disservice to yourself. And so I'm humbled that you all want to spend your time with me today. So thank you.
Well, thank you for sharing that story. That if that doesn't get people's ears to perk up about why it is they need to listen to understand how to be as effective as possible, then I don't know what will. And thank you for your bravery and honesty for sharing that with us.
Thank you. Yeah, it's really important to me.
Oh, yeah, it can be heard in the emotion in your voice, and it's. I honestly I don't know what to say, but it's there. It's clearly near to your heart.
Yes. So I'm looking forward to the discussion. Tell me, I have an interesting question, if you don't mind me jumping in.
Of course, let's do that.
I think So one of the questions I often get clients who come to us. So I'm now an executive coach. I work with high performing executives who are also often trying to figure out what got them to where they are now isn't necessarily what's going to get them to where they want to go. And so we often talk about, I'm so busy. I need to figure out how to manage my time. And so my first question to them, and I'm going to ask you, Simon, the question is, what's the story that you tell yourself about time?
I think that's an excellent question. I think the story I tell myself about time would be that there's enough time to do everything that I want to do. But I also find that I will shift often to realize that time is the amount of time something will take, I undervalue that or I underappreciate it. And because I don't take that into account, I just make a quick assessment and go from there. So I can fit that in. That's probably the best way to say it would be as I can fit everything in. It's just time. It'll be okay. But
And does that happen? Do you fit everything in?
Oh, no. I've started to learn to get a bit better at letting things go off to the side, but I don't even know that I truly let things go off to the side. What I do is I will shelve something until I'm able to get to it. The problem is while that thing is on the shelf, I'll start looking at another new fun thing that's interesting to me. It's tough.
So I'm anticipating that you have a lot of things on your shelf that you've just never gotten to.
Oh, yes. Many things.
Interesting. So when I think about that, I think about one of the things that I find is that it's time management or time investment. Time management isn't necessarily trying to squish more things in less time. It's really about prioritizing very fiercely. What is it that I want to do? What is it that needs to get done? What is it that I want to do? And so being very clear about identifying what's important to you. And the other thing that I find too is that it's really about boundaries, right? What are the boundaries that I'm going to put on this? When you think about your time and you say, oh, I can just shove it all in there, you're essentially expanding your boundaries to say, I can do, right? And so you're carrying, I imagine that you have this this huge laundry basket, right? Of stuff that you're carrying with you that you want to get done. Whereas if you were actually carrying a smaller laundry basket and able to create that separation for you and say, okay, that's going to go on that shelf now. I'm choosing to put that on the shelf right now, as opposed to it just landing there because you don't have time for it, is a much smaller laundry basket to carry.
Oh, very much so. The laundry basket is large and it's full all the time. And then what ultimately happens is I either end up not being able to meet some type of commitment I've made because I can do it all. I can get it all done. I have plenty of time for that. And then ultimately I can't because I just don't. So it's often from myself quite hard to admit or even see, not necessarily admit, but see the amount of time something's going to take. And that has some significant ripple effects.
Well, so there is actually interesting data that shows that the things that we do actually take twice as long as we expect them to. So give yourself a little bit of grace there. You are not alone.
That'll be tough to do, but I'll give it a try.
So when we, a lot of people talk about time boxing as a tool, and there are a bazillion time management tools out there that, you can choose the Pomodoro method, or you can do all of these different types of methods. But ultimately what it comes down to is you can choose whatever method you want, but you're only treating the symptoms, right? The underlying thing is, what's really important to me? What do I need to get done? And when I talk about this with leaders, the important thing to recognize is your job is to make sure that that organization gets to where it needs to be, right? Your role now happens to be leading other people to do that. It's no longer doing the work. It's no longer the team that you are leading. It's actually the team that you're on. The executive team that you're on is more important than the team that you lead. So when you think about your priorities as a leader may be different than they were when you were the technician. And your priorities now are, how do I get everybody to do what they're supposed to be doing? How do I lead this team, as opposed to how do I get the work done?
And I think for me, it's a lot about asking myself those questions, taking the time to, no pun intended, ask myself those questions and actually take the time to respond to those. Because I think a lot of times I can say to myself, I'll be thinking, I can do this, I can fit this in. When if I had been honest with myself when I started taking on whatever, I knew it was probably pretty obvious that I wouldn't have the capacity, time capacity, or whatever to get this thing done properly, or to get this thing done. I probably could get it done, push through, but I would get it done at a level that I would want. And then that causes a whole other side effect of issues. Does that make any sense at all?
Yeah, well, because what comes up for me when you say that is actually like the thought load and the energy, the mental energy it takes to think that you're going to get all of those things done as quick as you think you're going to. And then realizing that you're not getting it done and having that, whatever feeling is associated with that, whether it's guilt or shame or whatever it is, you're like, oh, just another example of me not being able to do what I'm supposed to do. Whereas if you do take that time up front and set those boundaries and be fierce about what's important to you, you alleviate a lot of that.
And it's that honesty and recognizing it. And for myself, it took me a long time to realize that wasn't necessarily a weakness, that if I couldn't do all these things, it was just the reality of there's only so much I can do in a given amount of time.
Yes, right. There's only one you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is actually sort of an interesting concept too, which is there's only one you. And for leaders, there's only one you in the organization. So if you're doing work that somebody could be doing instead of you, you're sort of robbing the organization of your expertise. So when you think about that prioritization as a leader, what is it that only I can do? What is it that the organization wants me and my expertise for? And that may help you recognize, oh, you know what? It turns out that somebody else can actually create the spreadsheet and I'll review the spreadsheet. That type of thing.
That seems like that would work really well for me to be able to sit down and see exactly all the different things I have lined up, because a lot of times I just know, right? I rely heavily on a calendar to tell me what's going to happen throughout the day to manage my time. But, if it's a stacked day, then and things go sideways, as they often do in life, then there's a lot of adjustments and a lot of hat changing, and that can be challenging too.
Yeah, it's interesting. I work with a lot of business owners and I run a lot of mastermind programs. And the first thing that they do when they walk into my mastermind program is there's a TED Talk by Daria Long. She's an emergency room doctor. And she talks about the word crazy busy. She starts with the term, do you ever use the term crazy busy? And she talks about the importance of taking the word crazy out of it, because I can guarantee you, Simon, that you are prepared and ready for whatever is going to be thrown your way. And when we use the word crazy, it assumes that we're not going to be able to handle it. And it deflates our ability to kind of function as an adult, right? And be able to say, hey, I got this. I got it under control. I can manage it. And the other thing she talks about on it is actually prioritizing red, yellow, and green, the things that come your way. And using that as the method for understanding where does this become most, green's obviously the most important. If I get this done, there are other strings underneath that I can pull that will impact other things, that type of thing. So, I think that it's a really good, 15-minute talk, Daria Long on, TED Talk, for people to talk about prioritizing. And we're using the word crazy busy. Because one thing too that I think is really interesting, at least in the United States, and you can tell me if this is true in Canada, so busy is sort of badge of honor in corporate America. I am so busy, right? That's like, if you're not so busy, you're not important, or something along those lines.
Oh, it's very similar in Canada. Like, I know with my career in the military, crazy busy was something I'm sure I've said before as well, many times. But there's an expectation that when you get into those next new roles, that you will be busier, which some of it is by design. It's the, a larger responsibility. I get that, but it's all about how we manage that. But there is that expectation that the busier you are, then the more successful you are.
Mm-hmm. Or you look. The more
you look.
Or you look. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Exactly. It's actually interesting because there's a lot of data on busyness and interruptions. So I'm going to throw some statistics at you because I think they're interesting. So, talk about interruptions for a second and just kind of focus for a minute, because the average person can go 11 minutes before they're interrupted. And then it takes 23 minutes to get back to where you were in your brain in that thing. 44% of the time, that's us interrupting ourselves. It's checking the email, looking at the phone, talking to the dog, insert whatever it is. You're 44% of the time we are interrupting ourselves. And part of that, I think, is just really important for people to recognize. I realize I'm shifting gears here, but I just think it's important that in the world we live in today, right, we get 190 emails a day on average, right? And we check our emails. The average person checks their email 50 times a day. I mean, if you think about how many times just putting that cursor, you're thinking about what sentence to write and your finger goes on the thing and you go, oh, I'll just check an email. Well, why didn't we just do that to ourselves? Right. And so when we think about time management in terms of like the true time management of like, how do I get, stuff done? It's the most important thing to think about is what are we doing to ourselves?
Yeah. And I think it's hard, that introspective look to take. It's hard to do that in the first place, because I feel that a lot of times we might be afraid, if that's the right term to use, of what the answer is, if we're honest with ourselves and say, oh crap, or whatever the answer may be. I think that there's a lot in there. And also in the busier we get, I'll have a look at myself. I'll get through this project and I'll deal with it. I'll look at myself then. You know what I mean? And then I know I've done that. I've done that many times, and I rely heavily on my on my people around me to tell me, hey, you're not doing well. You need to pay more attention. So I've tried to find some of the my own personal cues that tells me when that's happening and pay attention to those when that's going on, but it's difficult. Does any of that make sense? I've kind of rambled.
Yeah, no, yeah. In fact, I would say that the beauty of having a coach, if I do say so myself, since I'm a coach, right? It's that forced hour to look in the mirror, right? It's the hour that you can actually show up in a safe space and go, I don't know what I'm doing. Or I actually need help with this. Can you help me look in the mirror and figure out what I can be doing differently?
And I've never had a coach for that, but it seems to me that one of those advantages, like you had said, would be to force the person to stop and have that introspective look, to really look in the mirror and say, what's going on right now? And have someone who is truly unbiased give an honest response.
Yes.
That's not going to be afraid of the answer or not going to be afraid to respond honestly. Does that, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So I often say we're your unbiased thought partner, because every other person in your life, whether you realize it or not, is biased in some way. Your boss wants you to do more work. Your colleague, wants you to go drinking on whatever, insert whatever it is. Your spouse wants you to spend more time at home. Your, kid wants you to come to the soccer game. Every single person has a biased response, except for somebody who's a coach. And I often say that coaches we're paid to tell you the things that nobody else is ever going to tell you.
Yeah, those uncomfortable truths that we may not necessarily want to hear, but I think more often than not, if we were being honest with ourselves, shouldn't be too surprised to hear.
And that's what I would tell you too, is that I often work with people and I say, I'm noticing this. What are you noticing? And they go, yeah, I knew that.
And those truths, those honesties, those reflections, whatever the term we want to use, if we pay attention to that and actually understand what's happening, that will actually make us more efficient and appreciate our time better.
Yes, you're absolutely true. Because the more that you can focus on your strengths, I often talk about, what you're good at and what you're quick at, and making sure that those are things that make the most sense, right? If you have something that you're not good at and it takes you a long time, that should be nowhere near your plate, right? If you're a business owner, you need to delegate or outsource that. If you're a leader, you need to figure out how to get somebody else to support you doing that. I mean, there should be none of those things on your plate. So the more that you're honest with yourself, absolutely, the more efficient you can be.
And in the sense of an emerging leader, it makes sense that we're feeling stressed and overwhelmed and all the different things. And that's not to suggest that other leaders don't feel those things, but in those first few positions where we were more than likely put into that role based off of our technical skill set, it can be even more challenging to now shift, because one of my experiences was when I was setting up my day and I was a corporal or whatnot in the Air Force. It was easy to set my day up based off of what my tasks were going to be that day, because it was a doing task. And I knew that if I had to weld this part, it took approximately this amount of time. But now all of a sudden I was being asked to shift and set other people's schedules and long-term schedules. And that time appreciation was difficult to understand. So I'm wondering if you have any thoughts on that at all.
Yeah, absolutely. Because that is spot on what I run into with emerging leaders. And the most important thing that I want emerging leaders to understand is your job is no longer to do the work. Your job is to create an environment where others can do the work. And I think that's really important for you when you're thinking about it during the day, to give your example, right? To say, what are the doing things that I should be doing? Well, you're not doing those things anymore. Your job is to have the conversation with the people who are doing the work to make it a better environment for them. And by the way, if you're still doing the work after you know this, give yourself a couple months to figure out how to make that happen. But if you're still doing the work, it's time to look in the mirror. There's something wrong with the way you're functioning. That's one of the hard truths that I need to tell people. You're either not letting something go, you're not investing time into others the way that you should be to help bring them along. You're more worried about your own hide than you are about the organization's hide. You're worried about how you look, right? So there's something there. So if you're in that leadership role for, over 6 months and you're still doing, and you have resources working for you, then there's something wrong.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's understanding that there's something wrong and understanding that how this is going to get taken care of. Yeah, do you have any thoughts?
So I think, it's really important. The number one thing that I hear is, oh my gosh, it takes so long to train them. I could just do it myself. Or the other thing that I hear too is like, well, I can't make a mistake on this. Right. Well, so part of leadership is helping yourself understand that people have to make mistakes to be able to learn. And so taking that time, I understand. I have been there. This is not just me preaching. I have been in every position within an organization. I understand how hard it is to bring new people on. I understand when you think that the person below you is not really capable. But until you invest the time in them and give them the opportunity to actually grow, you're going to be stuck in the role that you're in right now.
And while I can understand in those of us new to our roles and our positions, it's hard to give up that sense of control by not being the person who's actually doing the work and doing those things, but understanding that in these new positions, as you'd mentioned, it's not about us doing the work. It's about us overseeing it and ensuring things are getting done properly and effectively and all the different words we want to throw in there. And if you're, as a leader, we're willing to allow ourselves to embrace that, eventually things are probably going to be kind of messy in the beginning, but we'll find our own path. We'll find our own way or flavor of doing things, and we will be more effective and our time will be used a lot more efficiently.
Yeah, let me just give you a quick example. I was talking to somebody yesterday and her staff, she's trying to bring her staff along and she says, well, I can't get him to understand. So he needed to do a PowerPoint presentation. He gave it to a subordinate. The person gave it back to him and he said, well, then I had to go back and I had to redo the whole thing because he didn't do it right. And she said, no, what you needed to do was make comments on it and hand it back to that person so that they could then hand it back to her, to him. Because this middle management guy can't get anything done. He's always late. He's always working 20 hours a day. He's just completely overwhelmed because he's still in that doer role. But the expectation of the organization is that he's in the leadership role. And so it really is about figuring out how to let go of that control.
And that's difficult, especially when we're in the trenches doing the things and we're feeling the pressure from people above us telling us to get things done faster and quicker. And now we're in that weird middle zone where we're supposed to be that go-between. And it's tough, but take the time. The irony is sometimes you need to go slower to go faster. Take the time, have a look and have a real look.
Yeah. And one of the things is, I think from a time management perspective is people often say, I just got to work harder. I just got to work more. Actually, no, you can't. I don't have time to stop and think. Actually, you can't afford not to have time to stop and think. So that slowing down to speed up is really important.
Oh, hello there. It's Glenn, the voiceover artist. And if you're hearing me, that means we're at the midpoint of this episode. Do you have an idea for an episode that you feel is vital for emerging leaders? Leave the idea in the comments section, and if your topic is chosen, you will have the opportunity to join us as a co-host during the recording session. So, drop us a note and let's talk. This podcast is made possible by listeners like you, and if you feel we've earned it, please tell your friends and leave a review to help us grow our following. And now, back to the show.
So I'd like to offer an example of myself where I think might help really illustrate this point. Would that be okay?
That would be great.
Fantastic. So I have my private pilot's license, and I have been working on different. What's the word I'm looking for? But I've been working on different other things to do with my flying. For example, I have a night rating, and I'm in the process of getting what's called an instrument flying rules rating. So it's the next natural progression to pilot training. And it's the test there's a two portion. There's a flying portion, there's an actual written test. And the written test is called the INRAT, and it is regarded in Canada anyways as one of the hardest tests to get through, just for a bunch of different reasons. And I chose to take that course on and that testing and studying in the middle of doing this podcast, starting a new job, in the middle of the pandemic, all the different things all happened at the same time. And I said to myself, I can do this. I can make this happen. I'll just dedicate a half an hour a night to that, and I'll study it all up and it'll be great. I didn't spend the half an hour a day because I just didn't have the time to do that. And even if I'll word that better, there was physically time in the day to do it, but I knew that I was not mentally prepared or capable of doing it just because of how tired I was from doing all the other things I was doing. But I also knew I need to get through this. So, and that's, I think, the biggest part of the takeaway to this. I needed to get through this. So instead of taking the time and actually studying and learning the material and trying to figure it all out and understand what I was learning, and for a little bit of context, IFR flying it's basically flying with your instruments to know exactly where you are for having your situational awareness. Whereas normal pilots fly or the basic entry level flying, visual flying rules, meaning you're looking outside. It's a beautiful, clear, sunny day generally, and you're relying heavily on your Mark II eyeballs is the running joke to tell you where you are. So IFR is a lot more in depth. So anyways, so you really need to understand the rules that are associated with all of it. So anyways, I went to go do the test, and I spent hours and hours and hours preparing for the test. And I think it's important to note that I didn't learn the information. I spent all that time to get through the test. Because of that, when it actually came time to do the first time I did the test, I did terribly. I bombed. It was just embarrassing. And because I didn't know what I wasn't trying to learn the information, and the questions are framed in such a way to know the information. So I went and did it. And so the second time I went to go do the test, and I knew I needed to take the time, but I was still embroiled in all these other things. So I did a little bit better, but I still bombed the test because while I had started to get the idea that I need to learn the information, I wasn't taking the time to actually learn it. I was still trying to stick to my tried, tested, true way of just getting through the test. But finally, after 2 attempts, I realized, okay, I really actually do need to sit down and learn this information. So I stopped. I had to look at myself. I had to look at everything that was going on around me. And I shelved the things that could wait. And I had a real honest question with myself when I was looking at things. Can this wait? Yes or no? And if it couldn't wait, then I just accepted I had made commitments and I needed to honor those. But if it was stuff that I could put to the side, I did. And I learned the information. And I actually, this time, while I still failed the test the third time around, it was only by one question. And there's, some different talks we could have about the INRAT test and whatnot. But the point is that I've took the time to learn all that. Now, if anyone's wondering if I've done a fourth test, no, I have not, because I realized that there was other things that I shelved that I now needed to pay attention to, and I was not going to be able to focus on that IFR training like I needed. So I put that to the side to get through the other things, to deal with them, because now they need my attention and my time. And when I've completed those couple of things, then I'll go back to that and I'll dedicate to that. And I've made a promise to myself not to take anything else on while I'm doing that IFR training. Not even say, yeah, I'll deal with this after the IFR training, because I know myself well enough to know I'll see it sitting on that shelf and it'll be calling my name. So I've made that promise to myself, and I've asked those around me to remind me if I say I'll take something on to tell me that I said I would not do that. And that is my way, my mechanisms of ensuring that I'm able to have enough time to do the things that I want to do, and also understand that I only have so much time in the day, because as you had mentioned earlier, time is our only truly non-reusable resource. So I think this example kind of fits into what you were talking about.
It fits exactly, because I think what you've learned is, this fierce prioritization, right? Being, very specific about what's important to you, right? What's really important to you is actually learning it and passing the test. Right. So you need to find that space and time and energy that it will actually be successful. My original question would have been for you, why is it that you decided that it was important to do that when you have all of these other things going on? Now, the flip side of that is, in our world today, we're not ever not going to have all of those other things going on. So the question is, which piece do you need to say no to in order to find that space? And what you're actually doing right now is saying no to a really important piece so that you can figure out these other things, so they're not staring at you from the bookcase. So it's really about that boundary that you're setting and figuring out what's important to you.
Exactly. And I'll be completely honest. It's hard. It's hard for me to not say, it's hard for me to say no to people when they ask me to do things. And I also have a pretty active imagination. I'm always thinking about what if about this, or what if we did this? How about we did this? So I'm always creating these new projects in my mind of these cool things that I think would be fun to do. I've had to learn that I can't do them all right now. And it's tough. It is very, very difficult for me to admit that. Now, one of the ways I'm able to help myself do that, not make myself, but help myself get through those moments, is reminding myself that I will have the time. I just have to accept the fact that it's not going to be right now. For whatever reason, I'll get there. It can sit on the shelf for a while. It can sit in the laundry basket. It might be a month. It might be 2 years. I'll get there when I get there. Things might shift. Priorities might change, and I might be able to sooner or later. As long as I'm willing to be open to the idea that it doesn't have to all be right now, I find that helps me be more present and ultimately more effective and efficient.
The beauty of the word yet. It's not time yet, right? And I think that also is, a great place to be. I often hear that I don't have to get it all done right now. There is an expectation that a lot of us carry that it just right now, right now, right now. Peter Drucker, who is like the godfather of, leadership consulting and management consulting, has a very well-known saying that says, I'm going to get it wrong.
No pressure.
To achieve something new, you have to stop doing something old. Right. And so when I think about that in your terms, it's, the stop doing something old is thinking that you're going to be able to get it all done at one time.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And it took me 2 iterations of the exam to realize that. And I could even tell the second time after the epic bomb on the first time, I remember saying this to myself, okay, that was terrible. I wasn't ready, but if I just do more of what I did harder, I'm going to be successful. I remember thinking that the stories we tell ourselves, and of course it was an epic fail. And then when I begrudgingly had to admit to myself, okay, this is not working. I need to actually learn this information. And everyone in the aviation community that was helping me get ready for this all told me the same thing. This test sucks. You just need to know the information. You need to take the time and learn it. And so it wasn't like it was a surprise to me. I used the internet to help me with resource tools. I had taken an online course and all the different things. And everyone said the same thing. You need to learn this information. You can flush it when you're done, but you still need to learn it to get through the exam. So it's tough.
Well, I look forward to hearing when you take it again.
Well, I do have a plan of attack this time. So it's kind of interesting. It relates to this. So I'm getting through a couple of different projects around the house. I've got some interesting podcast things happening. So I'm getting those completed. And then what I'll be doing is I'll be retaking the online course. It's an instructor-led online course. I'll be retaking that. But the way the course is designed is it's meant to help you teach you the information, but help you bridge a gap to prepare you for the exam with learning the information. So, but they even said on the first time I did the coursing that the idea ideally you need to do the exam within 2 weeks of doing the course because of memory fatigue and memory loss, information loss, sorry. Mm-hmm. So now what I've done is I've actually taken the time to look at when the exam schedule is going to be, and I'm going to take a course the weekend before. I'm going to book my exam date, and I'll take the course as close to that exam date as possible, where I did it the other way around. And that was a big part of that. But that's also part of the learning and admitting that I can't go 3 months between the coursing and the exam.
That is actually the definition of slowing down to speed up right there.
Yeah, it was tough. It's tough to do. I can hear myself, no, go faster, press harder. And I think this brings up a point too, and tell me if I'm wrong, like as leaders, especially those of us into the new roles, we're feeling that pressure to go hard, to go fast, to prove ourselves. Look, the harder and faster we can go, the better a leader we are. But that, of course, has an effect on how time effective we are. Does that make any sense? Do you have any thoughts on that at all?
Yeah, I think that is And I felt that completely when I was the CEO of the Maryland Health Benefit Exchange. It was just push harder, harder, harder. And, I slowed down and taken a look and said no to certain things, and no, the organization can't hit that. And no, that's not in the strategic direction of us. And it's counterintuitive because no human wants to say no. We want to be able to be all things to all people, and we want people to like us, and we want to know that we're good at our job, right? And so the feeling of, I've got to be able to do all of this because this is what the expectation is. I think what we don't realize is sometimes that expectation is actually us putting that expectation on us. It's not actually leadership putting it on us.
Oh, I know I've done that to myself many, many, many times. I've decided I needed to do a thing. I've self-imposed pain, I call it. And I've certainly done that many times. I'm curious, do you have any practical tips or ways that new leaders could make themselves go slow down or recognize when they may need to have a check at their efficiency or effectiveness?
Yeah, it's interesting. So 12 minutes outside a day actually makes you more creative. And your brain actually stops functioning before it has an epiphany. So put those two together. Put also the fact that there's a chance that as a leader, you may be working from home now, sometimes more than you were in the past, post-pandemic. Take a walk. Literally get up from your desk, take a walk. Don't put anything in your earphones. Just walk quietly on your own. Take your dog if you want, but don't put anything in your ears. Sorry. Don't listen to this podcast when you're walking your dog for these 12 minutes. And just think, what is it that I can take off my plate? Where am I pushing myself too hard? Where am I not pushing myself hard enough? And start thinking about what is it that I can be doing differently? Just really take that time and plan some questions for yourself to think about those things. That's a very practical, easy thing to do that you can do. Even if you're at work, you can take a walk around the building and just find the space for yourself to say, what could I be doing differently? I think secondly, when I think about just delegation for especially emerging leaders is very difficult because there's an assumption that you just sort of go dump it on somebody's plate and then they get it wrong and then you got to redo it. Figure out exactly what you want to delegate. Take a look and ask yourself, what are the things that only I can do? What is the organization that we talked about? What is the organization paying me for my expertise? And start figuring out what you're going to delegate. And then identify for yourself what success will look like when you delegate it and begin to have that conversation with the person you're delegating to. So it really, both of those come around to looking at yourself.
And that can be very difficult, but you're absolutely right. Don't be afraid to delegate and understand that sometimes when you're delegating something out, you're going to make a mistake. Mm-hmm. You might do it too much or too little. That's okay. That's all part of the learning. If I could, I'd like to offer to give yourself a break, no pun intended. And I'm not specifically speaking to sit down and go in a quiet spot, which that is also great advice sometimes too, but be kind to yourself might be a better way to word it. These mistakes are going to happen. And as a reminder, we're talking about us in new leadership roles, be it our first time in a leadership position or our first time with a new team. Mistakes will happen. Even the most senior people are going to make mistakes. None of us are infallible. That's okay. That doesn't mean we're not good at our job. It doesn't mean that you can't lead. It doesn't mean that you're not effective with your time. It simply means that you're going to make mistakes. It's what you choose to do with it afterwards is what really matters. Do you have any thoughts on that at all?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, every single person's going to make a mistake. Even senior leaders, CEOs have difficulty delegating appropriately. They make mistakes in who they believe in. They make mistakes in how they communicate. Everybody makes mistakes. And so it really is just kind of giving yourself that grace to say, okay, well, what did I just learn? Right? I learned something and I'm going to take it with me as I move forward.
Exactly. And lastly, I'd like to, my thought would be, we don't need to control every single thing to be effective and efficient. There's an element of that for certain, but we can't control every single thing.
Yeah, it's interesting. I have a tool that I work with a lot of people, and it's how much you actually can control. And in a big circle, it's like, you write down all of the things that are worrying you or that you want to be, controlling. And then you identify which ones you truly have control of, which ones you can influence, and which ones you have no control of. And it turns out that the ones that you have no control of are often much bigger than you think they are. And they take up all of your energy. So when you realize which ones you can actually influence and what you can truly control, it takes that negative energy out of your body.
And that's the big thing. Once we realize once we're at peace with understanding what we have control over and what we don't, it helps a lot to be able to just roll with whatever it is that's happening.
Mm-hmm.
We can't have our fingers on everything. Mm-hmm. Rebecca, we've been having a fantastic chat. We've talked a lot about how time effectiveness and time efficiency and time management can affect all of us in many ways. We've talked about some different practical tips and whatnot. I'm curious do you have any final thoughts? And if people would like to reach out to you and maybe use your services or just have a chat, how can people do that?
Sure. So my final thoughts are, this is an ongoing journey. Time management and time, how you invest your time is an ongoing journey, and you're going to have ups and downs, and there are going to be times in your life that work is going to win, and there are going to be times in your life when your personal life is going to take over, and that's okay. And so I think my last piece is, again, you're never going to nail it. You can use different tools, but it's never going to be 100% all the time. And so give yourself that grace and recognize when there are powers that be that are beyond you that are causing things to happen. I think, if people want to work with me, my website is www.extendcoach.com. We are based in the United States. We have several coaches who are on our team. And we work with high-performing executives and who can't figure out what it is that's going to get them from here to there. We often work with women who are trying to find their voice in a new way. And so if we have, in fact, we have in this spring, we have what's it called when you go? We have a retreat. We have a retreat coming up for women who are trying to find their voice. If you've been living in this space and you're doing what you're supposed to do for so long, and then all of a sudden you realize I'm not happy doing what I'm doing, we have a retreat for women in the spring. And in the fall, we have a leadership retreat going on to help people really dive into their leadership expertise. And so we do individual coaching, we do retreats, we do mastermind programs. We create great leaders across the board. So just go to our website, extendcoach.com, and figure out how we can help you.
Well, thank you very much for your final thoughts and for everything today. Of course, the links for the ways that folks can connect you will be inside the show notes. And if anyone wants to talk to Rebecca, I strongly recommend it. Clearly, you're speaking from your heart, and your lived experiences have shaped things in such a way that have made it that your advice will be more than just, how do I word this? More than just because of the client privileges involved in that. It's coming from the heart to genuinely want to see people succeed. And it's been a real pleasure to have you with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, that's a wrap from the front. In this episode, we talked about time management and how to make all of us be as effective and efficient as possible. Before we close, I'd like to remind you of one fantastic question that Becca offered us. What is the story we tell ourselves about time? Think about that when you're worried about the time and how much you have or don't have. Thanks for tuning in, and remember, leadership without passion limits the depth of your vision.
Never miss an episode by following us on all of your favorite feeds. While you're there, please consider leaving an episode review and let us know what topics you would like to hear about. Be sure to join us next week with your host, Simon Cardinal, for another episode of Trench Leadership, a podcast from the front, Produced by iGlen Studios. Music provided by Ashamel of Music.